This is the Marketing Hero podcast by ClearPivot, turning marketers into heroes. Welcome to the Marketing Hero podcast by ClearPivot. We have Lori on the call, Lori Mankin. She works for a company called LifeSize, and I'm going to interview her today. Okay, let's get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell the audience about what you do for LifeSize and what is a kind of a normal day in the office for you.
Sure. So I've been doing marketing for tech companies for probably about the last 10 years. I've been on very small teams where I'm the only marketer. I've also been on teams of 3, and right now I'm on a little more of a robust team. I think there's about 15 marketers right now. And then I've also seen the other side where it was a team size of about 30. So this is an interesting middle space for me. And so LifeSize is a video conferencing company. And what I do there is I mostly focus on demand generation. I do a lot of content creation on a very regular basis. I think my expertise is probably in our nurture campaigns, kind of the guardian of all the nurture campaigns, whether it's getting prospects to move more efficiently through the buyer's journey or getting customers to adopt to the product more effectively, and also some upsell campaigns as well. So that's kind of what I do. And I've been there about 2 years now.
Oh, nice. So do you do much of kind of the ABM marketing? And for anybody that doesn't know what ABM means, it's account-based marketing. And if you do, tell us a little bit about what kind of LifeSize does in terms of ABM marketing and why it's important for them.
Sure. So I do a lot of ABM marketing right now, and I've actually done it at every company I've worked at, and it looks incredibly different, as you can imagine. So whether, you're a small business and you're just taking this on your own, or you're a large company, I'll try and kind of speak to both of those. But the way it works at LifeSize is, and as you can imagine, when you're doing account-based marketing, you work really closely with the sales team. And our structure is something that has been more successful with companies that have the resources to be able to do it. So you have your traditional inbound model where basically you're hoping people will come to you, and you're putting great content out there for them to kind of absorb and then move through the funnel and reach out to your sales organization. And ABM is kind of going back to what I consider the better or the more improved traditional marketing or traditional sales, where you reach out to very particular audiences and serve them something very customized. So as you can imagine, these efforts are incredibly different as far as goals go. And, if you talk to a lot of salespeople, inbound compensation for a sales rep is going to be so much more different. It's kind of asks a lot of a sales rep to really focus solely on very specific accounts. So what we do at LifeSize is we have a sales rep who helps with inbound leads, and then a sales rep that solely focuses on ABM or outbound. And that because ultimately what will happen is, if you have a situation where one person or the team is doing both things, it's very challenging for the sales rep to be able to focus on the outbound, because they will often focus more on what's right in front of them, the inbound element, because it's coming at them so quickly. So it's usually beneficial if you have the resources to keep those kind of separate. And I work with our sales team to develop email cadences for the outreach. We do some direct mailers for very specific audiences, and as well as some of the people on my team deal with the digital advertising that's served to these very specific companies that we're trying to attract and interest or gain interest into our company. So that's a little bit of an overview, if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Do you mentioned LifeSize is about 15 marketers. How do you have it kind of structured at the company? Do you have people working specifically on ABM, or and then you have other people that are doing more just kind of like the lead gen from the website? How is it normally structured at LifeSize, and where have you seen it differently elsewhere?
So what's interesting is we're kind of unintentionally aligned toward the ABM model, just because our demand generation team the demand generation team of the marketing team is about 5 people. And then the rest of the team is mostly the corporate marketing team. And they focus mostly on like content creation. They're really the writers for like white papers and blogs and video content and that type of thing. So they definitely are kind of geared more toward the inbound audience, whereas demand gen, we weren't really designed this way, but we have the flexibility to switch, though we do inbound efforts, be able to really focus on outbound as well. And so it's kind of interesting. And at some companies, big companies, or larger companies, I should say, I've been on teams where they've also split the marketing into specifically ABM creation or ABM team and an inbound team. And the reason for that is because you're just creating so much custom material. Like, for example, if you're creating, I worked at a social media company, it's now called Koros, but if you're working on a piece for Target, going specifically after Target, then you're going to want to have a white paper that explains specifically what they need to be doing based on what would be good for them for social media, kind of like a very in-depth audit. And it can be very time intensive. And if you're trying to create material, inbound material on a regular basis while keeping up with the regular side of things, it would be very frustrating to have to create this very customized, individualized experience. So I have seen marketing teams also be split in conjunction and then working really close with the sales reps team. But we, like I said, at Life Size, we're kind of designed for that with an unintentional effort. It just kind of seamlessly works that way.
And it's interesting that you say that, because obviously with account-based marketing, like you mentioned, it's very tailored to the specific company that you're targeting. So with companies that are deciding to wanting to do ABM, and how do they go about doing it? I mean, what kind of recommendations do you have in using the content that they have, just tweaking the name a little bit? Should they do more in-depth research for those type of things? I mean, how quickly can you put together an ABM program at a company that's never really done it before?
So I think what's interesting about large marketing teams versus small marketing teams is when you're on a small marketing team, you have access to everything. So I've been on teams where I have access to all of the design materials, and that made ABM incredibly easy, because when you have access to all the design docs, you can go in and change a couple things, especially if you're focusing on a specific vertical for ABM. You can go in, tweak a couple things to make it feel like a very custom experience, and it's very simple. However, in a larger organization, you usually have someone who's a designer, and you want to be mindful of their time. So my recommendation to larger companies would be to try and create kind of templatized design. Anything that's going to be intended for ABM use needs to be easily accessible to that team or those individuals who are going to be creating tailored content. Just that accessibility. And you can use, very advanced designers can use tools like Adobe and anything under their suite, but you can actually probably take a lot of these materials and put them on Canva, which is free, and then you can have much easier access to people who may not be very focused designers, and then they can create that kind of tailored content. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges at a larger company, though, is being able to customize and create that tailored content quickly without taking up too much time on the designer side who may be on the other team. So that's always a balance.
Yeah. And how does this directly affect the sales team? Because I know with inbound leads that are coming from the website, they go straight to the sales as a new lead. With account-based marketing, it's a little bit different. The sales team is already working that lead and you're working on kind of upsell, or you have a certain company that you work with, and now you're trying to target companies that are kind of similar to that. And I know you mentioned that you work directly with the sales team, but how does it differ between those two?
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically the traditional inbound process is we will have leads come in, and when they reach a certain threshold, if they're asking for a demo, obviously they get a response pretty quickly. But if they're downloading a certain amount of content or reach a certain threshold, that's the inbound sales reps key to kind of respond. For outbound, we go through a number of strategies. We probably create a separate focus quarterly. And that focus can be just based on feedback from the executive team, feedback from the sales reps. And then, of course, my favorite is kind of any data-induced feedback, where we're kind of seeing a trend amongst something, or we're seeing a lot of conversion amongst a lot of customers coming in. That's always the best audience, because for a number of reasons. One, if you've just got a flood of certain customers who are all very similar, then you understand how you can craft messaging that really meets their needs. So for anyone who's getting into ABM, I would say the easiest way to do it is look at your most recent acquired customers and then go after what's called a lookalike audience, because you're already kind of walking the walk and talking the talk. So on a quarterly basis, when we're looking at the audience that we would like to go after, and again, if you're new to ABM, I would recommend you go after audiences that are most like the customers you've been acquiring recently, because you already have the messaging down. And then the second piece of advice that I would give someone starting into ABM is to, if you're not comfortable allocating the funds to go after a brand new audience, you can kind of test out ABM with your closed lost within the last year. That's an audience that knows you pretty well, and it's a more calculated approach and a less cold calling situation. So your dollar will definitely go farther when you're focusing on that. So the way I work with the sales reps who are working on outbound materials is for kind of the e-staff audience of whatever companies we're going after, we'll craft and tailor some sort of direct mailer, because, executive staff or CEOs, they don't have a tendency to go to a lot of webinars. Some do, and that's great. That's awesome. But it's interesting that we go so old school, and direct mail still can be the loudest way to reach someone. And it's interesting because, when you're going after e-staff level, you probably are going to get something a lot nicer, because you need to get past that barrier, that person. So, we've done things like very nice bottles of wine, incredibly nice cutlery sets. It's just a way to get eyes in front of that really high level person. I get sent direct mailers quite often, and marketers marketing to marketers.
Yeah.
It's always such a joy, because we're going to appreciate everything they send us in general, just because we're like, oh, good job, well played. Or some people might be the hardest critics on it. But I don't receive knife sets, because that wouldn't be a very appropriate target. So
yeah.
We all get fun little puzzles or something interesting that'll kind of catch my attention. So I'll work with the sales team to develop kind of what's the hook, what's the direct mailer for the e-staff, and then if we would also like to send something directly to the IT director is kind of our audience at Lifesize, so that's who we really focus on. And then we'll also work together to put together an email cadence in kind of response to that direct mailer. So it's a lot of language, like it's very casual. If you haven't looked into Drift, they're a chat app, but they also do a lot of email marketing. If you haven't looked at Drift's email templates, they're amazing. We're kind of gone of the days of, the marketing emails that are like, please read my white paper. It's fantastic. Like, the emails have gotten a lot more casual. They've gotten a lot more fun. They use emojis. They really grab you. It's really fun.
Yeah, I love seeing those, the ones that are just not so serious, because you can't continue to keep take yourself so seriously all the time, especially a company like Lifesize that's like, it's video,
Yeah.
Video is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be engaging. It's supposed to be, human, so and we're all human, and we want to see, things that are just not like, here is our white paper on blah, blah, blah. It's just like, okay, well, what's actually in here, and why do I want to read it in a very casual way?
It's hard as marketers, because you might run into situations where you're trying to stay on brand, and so you might run into roadblocks where someone says, oh, this isn't on brand, or it doesn't seem as professional, or we want to go this route. If you can find a way to introduce humor and make somebody laugh, that's worth everything.
Super powerful. Yeah, I know. And I think that's a lot of the things people don't realize, that you might have defined your brand, but there's still levels of your brand that you can change. Your overall brand can be the same, but the tone and language can evolve over time. So as we start to grow, as companies grow, as the technology gets better, it's okay to shift that a bit, to really engage with your customers that you're trying to target.
Absolutely. You can find a level of humor or lightheartedness with people and be able to connect with them. I think that's absolutely possible. And it's definitely a push for some people, but it's so much more worthwhile and the connections are so much greater. I can't tell you how many times I get an email and they say, I think it's something like, "Hey, do you want to grab coffee or something?" And I say, they got me.
It's like, yes, I do. I would like a venti
coffee.
chai tea latte with an ad chat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And even with the current circumstances where people are working from home, they'll say like, "Oh, it's fun to get creative. You can use like Uber Eats to actually deliver someone coffee, and then you can hop on a video call and actually have coffee together." So,
and I think that is huge with enterprise SaaS companies, because a lot of these sales members who work for these enterprise SaaS companies, where their targeted audience is, people that we're gonna get like a $500,000 sale from it, they're gonna meet them face to face. That still exists. And if you now, with this whole kind of transition with COVID and the pandemic that's happening, virtual is the way to go. So if you can incorporate that kind of like face to face way of doing something, but virtually, I think that's powerful.
Mm-hmm. So we're working with the sales team, we create those email cadences. Sometimes, we don't have a very large budget sometimes either. And you can be playful with that, just really get creative with it. I think one time we said, and this feels a little deceptive, but I think we pulled it off because we got a lot of good feedback from it. It was something along the lines of, our sales rep sent the email and the email's subject line was like, did you get the life-size Yeti I sent you? And then the next line is, well, guilty confession, I haven't sent it to you yet, but I want to. And then you can kind of lead into the book a meeting with me. So if you have like limited stock or your CEO or somebody has an issue with like, I don't want to send out $500 knives to, multiple people or anything. I mean, Yeti cups are $40, like if you have to be a little more contained with whatever you're sending, you can find creative ways to engage someone and offer it up without actually sending it.
Yeah, and I feel like people find humor in that too. They're not going to be upset that they didn't get a Yeti. They'll be like, well played, life size. And
another fun thing I've seen is multiple options, like giving people their pick, because you can do a lot of research into people on social media to determine what they'd like, but you may not know them completely. So it's kind of fun. I've seen people do offers like, hey, pick A, B, C, D, and then let me know what time you can meet, and then I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's good as well. With LifeSize being a video conferencing company, do you incorporate a lot of video in your marketing, especially for ABM? And what type of videos do you do?
Yes, absolutely. I think all of our sales reps send a lot of not canned videos. They'll take a second and it doesn't take that long. And once you get in the routine, take a second to record something, give them a really custom experience. You're using their name, and then just send it off. And the open rates on something with the video are just exceptional. And video is always an exceptional way to.
And it's not that hard, really. It's anybody can do it.
It's a great skill for them to learn, and then it's good for them to take a moment to kind of brief themselves and understand fully what the customer, the prospect would respond to. So I've also heard from sales reps, they feel more prepared when they're on the call because they've already done a video.
Yeah, I know. Because I think that's the hardest thing too, especially if you have like face-to-face on video. People get a little stage fright, it's funny because you're not in front of a stage and you're in front of your computer, but you're still making sure that you don't have a wrong angle, or how do I look when I'm talking like this? And so I think it gets people more comfortable in front of the camera, since we are moving into a more kind of virtualized world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the setup is already there, like, because they're recording videos, they have the lighting they want. So when they pop on, they're just that much more professional in real time as well.
And for your campaigns, what is the number one thing that you track? I know within any kind of agency company that you track certain things. People want different KPIs and stuff. But for you personally, what do you value seeing when you run a campaign?
Yeah. So what I value seeing is responses because as far as emails go, that to me is a huge success. I think that open rate and click-through rate obviously have their place, but responses are really where you see you made a connection. You can't get much more real than somebody reaching out to you, even more so than them clicking on the meeting link, because there's so many times where someone clicks on the meeting link and goes dark. When there's a response, there's almost, I mean, the conversion of them turning from a response into actual a meeting is just insane. It's like 95%. So
Wow.
that's what I pay attention to most, is response rate. Like, how many responses did it get to that email? And sometimes it is like, ha, that's funny, you got me, and sometimes it may not be relevant to getting a meeting, but most of the time it is. And even if it isn't, we just made, our brand isn't well known. I won't speak of the video conference Goliath that everybody else knows, but because you're all thinking about it, we're using it.
I know. And we're actually on Zoom recording too, so that's funny.
Exactly. But so if I can make a connection with someone to the point where they're responding to it, that kind of brand
Awareness
is, it's just that's worth it to me. So that's what I care about most. But I totally, obviously, at the end of the day, what we spend on a direct mailer needs to obviously the revenue needs to close.
Yeah.
And it needs to be paid for. So
definitely.
That's also something that's pretty close to our.
And you mentioned something earlier too, somebody that doesn't, like a company that doesn't have budget to target a new kind of like accounts, right? They only have what they have in their database. You mentioned lost deals, and I think that's powerful because you normally have to select a reason why it was lost. So you can filter, you can not only just contact those lost deals, but you can also understand why. So when you retarget them, you have a better understanding. So maybe budget was a problem last year, but it's not a problem for them this year. So you can get like really tailored in your messaging based off of the reasons why people have lost deals in the past.
Mm-hmm. Just I always recommend anytime you're running any kind of ABM strategy to definitely have specifically retargeting advertising, just so you're top of mind from a brand component. You can just be so much less in someone's face with that targeting and spend so much less money if you already with an audience that kind of knows you. They see you while the campaign's going on, and it's just like, oh yeah, life size, I remember them. You had brought up, go after closed lost audiences. Another great audience to go after if you're low budget or concerned about who you want to spend money on is upsell your customers.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the marketing trifecta, because you're spending money on, a customer, you're investing in your customers. So you're creating more brand affinity. They're much more likely to purchase. And it's just and they're just incredibly grateful. It's just nice to be put in front of your customers again. And that to me is, if you have no money for ABM and you want to try it, just work on an upsell campaign for your customers. Like that's where to focus.
And
for sure.
I think it's easy too. I know that, just for the audience knowing, me and Lori go way back. We've known each other for quite some time. Used to live in Austin.
What has it been like?
It's been 5-6 years, I think.
Time flies.
But Lori and we actually met, funny enough, that we at a HubSpot hug group. Well, we had met through friends before, but we didn't know we met each other. And then we saw each other again in a HubSpot hug group, or whatever they call it. And it kind of sparked this relationship. And so I know that Lori's worked in HubSpot, and I know that she's worked also in Marketo. But can you explain how that direct integration, but using a marketing software like that truly helps with like that upselling that you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different components. Without getting too tech nerdy too, if you're not using, it's very hard for small businesses probably to get into a marketing automation software that's priced well. Obviously, I'm biased. I definitely recommend HubSpot.
Yeah.
But even if you're a more robust company, I mean, the possibilities are endless. Like if you want to send out direct mailers on a regular basis, you can use Sendosa, and they're kind of the software of direct mailers, and they integrate with HubSpot. And then, I mean, we're talking Terminus is an ABM software where they serve ads that are ads to those custom audiences. So if you want targeted executives to only receive those ads then in all these places, then you can use something like Terminus. They integrate with HubSpot. Well, let's see, what other tech stack? I mean, you're just opening yourself up to this world. Yeah, we could you and I could nerd out on all the different apps that you could use, and HubSpot makes it so easy to connect with it. So it's not as hard. It's not simple, but it's possible to be able to prove out these things in the way you want to. And just knowing that every new software you introduce, you have to put the work into it, but it just makes it all that more accurate.
If you had any extra budget at Lifesize, where would that money go first?
Oh my goodness. That's such a good question. And it's so funny. Monica sent me the questions ahead of time, guys, so I could kind of think about it. And that was one I was like, oh, I really want to think about that one. And I can think of something great, and I still haven't thought of it.
Because it's hard. I mean, there's so many things that you want to do that you like. Would it be social? Would it be content?
Yeah.
Would it be pillar pages? I mean, there's just so many things that you can possibly do with the extra budget.
Yeah, oh man, it's insane. I mean, I want Sendosa. Honestly, if we do direct mailers enough,
there it is.
And I think the main reason I want Sendosa, and this is such an in the weeds nerdy comment, but like, you guys know, when you have a database to maintain, that it can become very challenging to make sure that you have the best address for the best contact. And there are so many times where when we send out a direct mailer, we'll get it back and then have to go manually into Salesforce and like update the address, or go find it, or go say that it's not real. And if you have an app that the app will kind of do that for you, like, hey, it got sent back, so then it can flag it, and then there's an automated process, and then I can go assign that to somebody else and go along my merry way.
I know, because your focus is marketing. You shouldn't have
go high level.
You don't want to deal with like a database of addresses. No, that's ridiculous.
And I think they even have something where it's like, oh, is this address? They might even have some sort of address checker built in at this point. So it's adding that technical aspect. I mean, it just feels so silly to have this stack of return stuffing, like, go through it. It almost feels like if we were never around for this, Monica, but what it Rolodex-y.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
I would buy that. That would be great.
That would be it.
I would just love to do more. I mean, direct mailers are super fun, but it's very hard to scale them. They're expensive, but they do make an impact, but they're not necessary. I've seen just as many deals open from like a really good email that we wrote.
Just the touch point,
like, Yeah. Actually, that quote unquote deceptive one, I do have a lot of integrity, so it didn't sell well with me, but trust me, we worded it just right, that the humor was there.
Yeah.
I think we got more deals out of that than we got out of the direct mailer associated with that.
And I think
actually A/B tested it.
Yeah, I think kind of like what I'm hearing is that, if you have a low budget, just get crafty, get creative.
Yeah.
You can do a lot with a little bit that you have. Look at your content that you have, see what you can use to target certain customers for ABM marketing. I mean, use what you have. If you don't have anything, start creating like a content calendar, because the knowledge, you have it. You just have to put it down on paper, and you have to figure out a way that you can target these people, and you have all that information there. You just need to kind of extract it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're almost we're up towards the end, but I wanted a couple of fun questions at the end for Lori.
Ooh, yeah.
So between your room, desk, or car, what do you clean first?
Oh man, room, desk, or car. I make my bed every single morning when I wake up.
I think that says a lot about you, Lori. Seems like you wake up with a lot of determination and drive for the rest of your day.
That's very sweet. I saw this video once. It was someone in the military said, when you wake up first thing in the morning, make your bed, because then you already did something and you got it done.
Exactly. You accomplished something. I think it's like a task that you check off and you're good to go.
Also, it just looks nice all day.
I know. And then you can go into a nice bed. And then last, do you have any words of wisdom for our audience?
I think that there's a lot of time marketing can be stressful. Something might not work, and or you put a lot of work into something and it didn't pan out the way you wanted it to, or maybe it's not even something. I mean, we all get those things we don't really want to work on. You get those things where you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to work on that. That's not a good idea. It's not strategic, and you have to do it anyway. But when when you set aside the time to allow yourself to be playful or really sit with it and try and find the humor in it, then it makes the messaging better. And you can have a campaign that you didn't want to do that turns out to be your favorite because you just think of probably the most fun and creative work you could imagine. And then it makes it really hard to start the next project.
But then you just got to do it all over again.
Yeah. So I would say, take the time I get my best ideas when I'm brushing my teeth. So make sure to take the time every once in a while to take a step back and find the humor in it and do that thing that is really get in your creative zone. Because if you're finding that you're doing something you don't like working on and you put yourself in your environment that you really thrive in, your brain starts to really think of something great, then you can turn a project you really don't like into maybe the best performing thing and most fun that you've ever had. So
I think that's great. Well, thanks, Lori. I appreciate it. You are our first interview.
Oh my goodness, so much pressure. I'm glad you told me that at the end.
But thanks. I really appreciate it. You've been listening to the Marketing Hero podcast by ClearPivot. Be sure to join us next time. For more information, visit www.clearpivot.com.